Typically, upon a first glance, when people think about Battlefield, they're often thinking about things like jets and tanks and sniping and realistic bullet physics and things like that. You know, like mortars and army man prone on a mountain with a machine gun, laying down suppressive fire. But in actual practice, that tends to be like a decent portion, but at the same time, quite a small portion of the game. In reality, what that tends to look like is one guy's in a tank going 90 and 2 and farming the infantry that are just trying to shoot at each other on a point. And for a lot of people who prefer to like actually play FPS games, that kind of sucks balls. The jets I can't really comment on, and the choppers I can't really comment on, but man, I'll tell you what. Historically speaking, Battlefield has had some of the best infantry or like gunplay mechanics of any FPS ever to exist, and I feel like a lot of people really neglect that fact. And it's kind of sad to say and sad to see that, because the skill gap and the expression, like the availability of expression, is so high in Battlefield, just for it to be limited, you know, by an often community sentiment of like, haha, Goldman Railway, 500% vehicle spawn speed, one-shot kills. Like, dude, that kind of sucks for a game that's got such variety and such depth in its gameplay. I bring all this up because it coexists directly with the last point I just made and the depth and complexity of the gunplay that it has. And so today I wanted to make like a little video on aim training for Battlefield 6, specifically the skills that one would target in order to maximize your effectiveness in the game as someone who maybe doesn't enjoy sitting in a tank damn near invincible with a small army of 13 goblins blowing blowtorches at your tank. And yeah, I'm gonna jump right into it. Hopefully this doesn't turn into a 26-minute video. I'm trying to target a 10-minute for this one. When we think about Battlefield, we need to first break down the essence of what gunplay looks like on paper. So we have pretty rapid flicks, small amounts of tracking, and ideally you're trying to get multiple kills. However, we can kind of break this down into a little bit less meta and more specifics into Battlefield. Battlefield has the squad system. The squad system, if maybe you're brand new to Battlefield, or maybe you're interested and this is going to be your first one, or maybe you've just been living under a rock, or you just, I don't know, don't pay attention. If you look at the bottom left right next to the minimap, those are your squad mates. Your squad mates are oftentimes, well, for a lot of people, just a spawn button for you, but it's meant to have like cohesion in small teams, and you have a bunch of squads in a single match. What relevance does this have? Well, typically squads are quite close together, which implies that if you're going for clips or you're trying to, you know, get multiple kills, you generally expect the multis to come in sets of 4 because squad mates are going to tend to spawn on top of each other after they die, or your squad's going to revive you if you die, things like that. So again, we're getting kind of more into the theory and philosophy of this, but generally speaking, you should expect to be fighting a player in sets of 4. And when I say a player, I mean that literally. If you see one player, you should expect 3 more to be not far behind that one. With that in mind, we now know that on paper, we are expecting to get multi-kills of at least 4 every single time. Not all the time, but every single time we should. We need to be able to track a target for a brief amount of time, and we should have very comfortable skills when it comes to flicking targets. In translation to that, this is an extremely target switching heavy game, specifically speed target switching. Sometimes your evasiveness comes into play, and sometimes you're a little bit further out at distance and you need to be able to more effectively track a target over a period of time, thanks to the bloom and spray mechanics of Battlefield games, but again, that's just something you develop over time in the game. So, right off the bat, we're looking at something along the lines of speed target switching, smooth tracking, and static clicking. Those are the 3 big ones that I point out for Battlefield. And again, if maybe you're not super savvy or even in the loop at all for aim training, static clicking is exactly what people think of when they think of aim training, which is clicking dots on the wall. Obviously, static clicking for me is, ironically, albeit the simplest on paper skill to develop, it's actually one of the most that's got a lot of theory, a lot of technique, and probably the widest skill gap because of its simplicity. And again, ironically, it is somehow still one of the most complicated skills to develop. Smooth tracking is exactly as it sounds, your ability to smoothly track a target that moves in a predictable motion. So think about a guy just running across the field. being able to match his speed, being able to understand what motions that player is going to take, versus something like reactive tracking, which is, if you imagine, something moving left and right very fast, kind of like your wobble strafe 80-80 kind of things. And these two skills come together quite comfortably into something known as speed target switching, or just target switching in general, which is your ability and effectiveness to eliminate multiple targets via flicking to it and tracking it for a very short amount of time. Again, it looks like the average TTK in Battlefield 6 is supposed to be about 1/3 of a second, but it's probably fast. But with the relatively delayed netcode in the beta, that is sometimes open for debate. Alright, I covered the what, let's cover the how and why. As for the why, well, I think it's a simple answer, to be honest. A lot of people will have a mentality of, I don't need to aim train, I'll do it in the game. But objectively speaking, I can't really say objective, sorry. Subjectively speaking, spatial awareness and game awareness and map awareness, that I guess you could kind of lasso those together, are by far my strongest skills. As far as benchmark ranking, I'm a master complete for season 5, which is, that's alright, like it's at the top of the intermediate, you know, obviously I'm just under grandmaster for advanced. I try to not get too looped up into benchmarks because it means fuck all in the grand scheme of playing a video game, but it just means that I have like okay mouse control, and that's really nice. As far as anecdotal evidence, it's helped a lot with my confidence in being able to like just straight up brute force gunfights, and that goes hand in hand with having strong map awareness, because I know that if there's 3 guys around this corner, had I not aim trained, then there's a good chance that maybe I don't hit the immediate 1, 2, 3 on them, and you know, my strong map awareness is functionally gone to waste. Holy moly. Assuming that was a good enough explanation for why, we can go into the how. Well, it's really simple. There's these concepts known as playlists and aim trainers, and I'll probably throw some in the description if you like want to work on specific things. But if I had to give you the quick rundown on what you should do, and again, it only takes 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes a day depending on your commitment levels. Obviously you can do more, but that's beside the point. You want to kind of start with a baseline, and then if you can, watch your gameplay back. If not, maybe just try to take mental notes and pay attention to where your shortcomings are. Are your flicks slow? Do you have poor transitions between targets? Do you struggle with matching the speed of a target? Maybe maybe you just can't flick onto a target very accurately. All of these things are something you should consider while training, and then take steps to actively work on them. A final note before we kind of get into the aim training end of things is you need to remember when you're approaching this that it's not supposed to emulate the game. Oftentimes from novice aim trainer players, there's a lot of mindset like, oh, well, this would never happen in the game. When am I going to shoot at a bouncing target? And that's not like the whole point of it. The whole point of it is to develop mouse control, not to emulate your game, because you would rather just play the game if you wanted to practice the game, right? So that's kind of the mentality to think about, is less about, oh, when are targets going to be bouncing up and down, and more of like, okay, I understand what this does. This is supposed to, you know, teach my consistency at being able to reacquire the target if I lose it, and being able to follow a consistent pattern, kind of things like that. For static, I have a lot of scenario weight towards Pokeball and things that have more horizontal-ish flicks. This is because Pokeball is, you know, literally a target switching scenario that's, you know, improvised and static. What that means is you want to hold down mouse 1 and flick from target to target. Ideally you land on it, but it's okay. It's imperative that you make sure you are flicking and not slowly dragging your mouse across the screen, because you want to build that good technique. Ideally you flick, and if you're off the target, you do a small little micro correction with your hand, fingers, or wrists, and continue on. Moving on to tracking, I've got a pretty decent emphasis on smoothness and smooth tracking in general. I tried to make this pretty generally forgiving, so there's not any crazy difficult scenarios in here. In general, you just want to follow the target, try to read its movements. This will be a little difficult at first, but you'll get the hang of it. And finally, we combine our static clicking and our tracking skills into target switching. This target switching has a big emphasis on speed target switching, which is going to be either slow or non-moving targets with a very fast time to kill. Ideally, you are going to minimize your downtime and maximize your damaging time on targets, flicking to them each one by one and killing them as fast as possible. Ideally, you don't want to leave anything alive because that's considered as like a tragic failure, but that's alright if you do. There's some evasive target switching in here, which means that the targets are going to have a little bit more like tracking style movements. It's going to be a little tougher to track, and it's more about upkeeping your uptime on damage. With all of the things that I've just pointed out and given to you information-wise, it's important to think about how you're approaching these things and developing your technique. And I'm a bit of a hypocrite for what I'm about to say, but not getting too fixated on the personal bests and not getting too fixated on leaderboard rankings over quality training. I tend to fixate a little bit on this myself, but it's also because I know that my leaderboard averages tend to relate to how hard I'm pushing myself and the quality of training that I'm enabling. I have two more little notes here as well. The first one is going to be on your tension management. You shouldn't be giga tensing any of your muscles in your hand, arm, or fingers, or anything to wrist whenever you do these, especially when you're pushing your speed. Yes, the burst of your speed comes from you tensing your arm or your hand or your forearm, but it's important to have proper technique. I believe Viscos has a good video on this that I can link in the description as well. But you want to be relaxed and use your tension very sparingly so that you can get to those burst periods without locking out. And again, it's pretty good to practice this type of thing in an aim trainer because your muscles are engaged for a full 60 seconds, sometimes longer in gauntlet scenarios. Whereas in a game, your muscles may be engaged for like 60 seconds throughout a whole match. And matches, you know, can be like 20 to 40 minutes in Battlefield. And the final note is regarding sensitivities. I promise your sensitivity doesn't matter nearly as much as you've been led to believe or how much you believe it does. I play my aim training scenarios on sensitivities ranging from 29 centimeters per 360 all the way up to 75. Why do I do this? Because sometimes it just works better. I also like to exercise different things. This leads me to have a very interesting gameplay composition in Battlefield, especially where sometimes I will play like 29 centimeters per 360 and sometimes I'll play all the way up to 55 and 60 cm. Although recently it's been more in the 40s, like 41, 44 I think is what I'm playing around right now. It's important for you to practice all of these where you can. I'm not suggesting that you do static on 30 cm, but I am suggesting, hey, maybe if you feel like you're kind of getting a groove with smoothness, maybe you bump your sensitivity a little bit faster, make it a little bit faster. Maybe you're struggling with static, maybe lower your sense and try to develop a little bit finer technique control and just general skill, and then lower it and try to go faster from that point. In general, you're gonna miss, you're gonna make errors, and this is all about fixing those errors and just becoming a better player in general. I hope all of this helps a lot, and hopefully I've introduced some people to aim training, the realities of it, and kind of what it looks like, and maybe we can have some more locked-in cat girls throwing some clips up on Twitter and YouTube. This is about all I got. I kind of passed the 10-minute marker that I wanted to hit, but hey, I think I covered some pretty damn important notes, so as usual, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you later. Peace.